boys, welcome back to the GROUPEX Podcast. It's so good to have you here for the second time. As we discussed in the last episode, we're going to be running through the 7 keys. So I just want to briefly, for those that may have missed the last episode, you should be going back to watch it or listen to it anyway. So pause, go back and do that. Once you've done that, come back here. Boys, we'll quickly run over I suppose, what we're going to be doing for everybody over the next couple of weeks. Yeah. Last week we spoke about, or we sort of went into detail around what a GROUPEX manager needs to be looking at, and how what we're doing here is not so much a course, not so much going into a lot of detail, but giving people enough detail so that they want to then jump on and do the online GFM course that Les Mills has on offer, and then obviously to reach out to you guys in the business partnership team to get more information if they can as well. Yep. So the first key we're going to run through today is creating a scoreboard. So, Sammy, I'm going to throw it to you first off, if you don't mind, and just say to you, what does it mean? What is creating a scoreboard? Give us a detail about that if you can, on what it means for key play number 1.
Yep. And between Dan and I, we definitely love a statistic or two, and potentially an Excel spreadsheet. I was definitely known in my last role for Excel spreadsheets. But it is more than just a spreadsheet or a numbers sheet in your studio. Creating a scoreboard realistically is all about being able to monitor your success of your group fitness program, which again feeds the business, as we spoke about last time. One of the most important parts of your facility, if you offer it, is group fitness. It's a great retention tool. It attracts people to your club. So being able to actually measure the performance of that department outside of the wage line that goes out every fortnight, every week, is really important. So there's a number of different things that we look at when we talk about creating a scorecard, but essentially it's all about being able to measure that success of your department.
Okay. So I remember there was a saying that was someone, Drucker, Peter Drucker, Jeffrey Drucker, I can't remember his name properly, that it was if you what was it? If you can't, I can't even remember it now. If you can't measure, if you can't measure, you can't manage. Is that it? If you don't measure, you can't manage.
Yeah, essentially that's right. It's you can't manage what you're not measuring, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't know what your group fitness attendance is, you don't know what your key club numbers, KPIs are, then how can you possibly manage and make decisions, informed decisions based on, as I said, I think I referred to it last time, if you're not recording these numbers and got a clear understanding of what is happening and seeing the trends develop, you're relying on hope or a gut feeling to make decisions rather than accurate data.
Yeah. So I want to ask this question. This is to throw on this completely left. We measure attendance, and for a business, yeah, that's great. But from a member's perspective, let's be honest, they don't really care about attendance. From a member's perspective, they'd be caring about their own results. As a business, shouldn't we also care about their results as well as the results of what the business is doing?
Yeah, it's a fair comment, but you know what? It's actually interesting when you say members don't care about attendance. There's a really interesting stat in the OGFM that talks about 59% of your current membership is actually concerned about their attendance or is dissatisfied with their current level of attendance. So attendance actually is a big thing with members as much as it is about the business metric. It's really important. It is an important conversation or an important topic for members as well.
Yeah. No, cool. It just popped into my head, and I just wanted to throw that up there just to sort of go, hey, what, I understand from what we're doing here, the focus is about attendance and helping clubs with it as well. But it was also, as a member, I look at it differently. I'm not so much interested in what you're doing as a club. I want to know my results. And I think there are ways that obviously clubs are looking at today to program specific classes at specific times, which I'm sure we're going to go into over these keys over the next couple of weeks, so that the members get better results as well as what we're actually doing. So, but I'm going to park that. We'll move it back over to the scoreboard stuff for what we've been talking about. So, Dan, I'll throw this to you. What is the first step to creating a scoreboard? What do we need to do to start off with?
Yeah, it's so simple, but it's something that clubs can struggle with so easily as well. So there's really three key numbers that a group fitness manager and a club manager and the powers that be need to be looking at. And you can make a lot of decisions and understand a lot about your business based on those three key pieces of data. And those three numbers are: what's the club membership size? What's your weekly, monthly, fortnightly participation to the club, so attendance to the club, individual swipe throughs the door, and then what, as a percentage of those total club member attendances, how many are going into the group fitness space? And with those three numbers, you can make a lot of, you can determine a lot of, you can see a lot of trends. You can determine a lot about the health of your group fitness department, as well as the health of your club overall.
Okay, so we're gonna look at those three figures. How do we, as an example, I'm a club that's just opened up, and I've got this throw figure 2,000 members on my books that they come through, they do all that kind of stuff. Is there when they're swiping in at reception, is that how I can actually get my data from the software that we're using? I'm going to be able to report on that to say, yep, between a certain time and a certain time, that was how many people came in. Is that what's going to be happening in most cases?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all clubs have got a CRM software of some description, so that's measuring obviously how many people scan through. You can break it down hour by hour or week by week. I mean, my suggestion would be to look at your total club membership and see how many times a week though your members are scanning in. And we know the magic number is 2 member visits per week, which leads to a well-retained membership. So that should be the goal that all clubs strive towards, is if you can have every member of your club attending 2 times per week, then you're going to have a very well retained membership base, which allows you to focus on acquisition and things like that, rather than focusing on trying to just stem the flow of cancellations.
Okay, cool. So from the reception area as such, with the main CRM we're talking about, that's where we should be able to grab that data to say who's coming in and obviously how many members we've got. Yeah. What's the next one we're talking about is in attendance. What's the easiest way for clubs to record the attendance? What are we doing in Clubland at the moment to record attendance is it just written down on a piece of paper? Is it done computerized? How is that done in different places at the moment? Sam, can I throw that one to you?
Yeah, and it's really dependent on the club and what resources they have available to them. Some clubs still use the numbers sheet in the studio and manually record it. Other clubs that I've worked for in the past use an app system, so something where a member will book in and then an instructor will mark off the attendance, and you can go all the way to the top end, the sort of, maybe call it the gold standard, that because it's probably the best kind of software you can get, and that's what Les Mills International, or Les Mills New Zealand use actually, which is a computerized system that will basically monitor the amount of people that are in that studio based on the occupancy of the room. So it's not so much an AI where it sees faces and things like that. It literally just measures how many people are in that room.
Yep. Okay, so then that'll give us data that we actually need to say, okay, as you said, X amount of people have come into the gym today and X amount of people actually went into group exercise. So we start with those figures and looking at, okay, let's just throw an example out there. I have my 2,000 people. I had 100 people come into the gym today, of which 50 people went into group exercise classes. We know those figures are a bit weird in what I've just said, but it gives people an understanding on what we're trying to get across with that. So looking at that then, and we're looking know how to create data and grab data to use. What do we need to look at, and how do we use it? What do we do with it? We're grabbing it. What do I do next? Is it how do I set targets? How do I look at doing goals? Do I need to set goals? How do I know what to do with that data? Great to have the data. And one thing I remember from way back when was venues were actually collating it, putting it on a spreadsheet or putting it, on that piece of paper that they had. And then that piece of paper would get put into a lever arch folder and never looked at again. So, what do we do with it? Dan, I'll throw that one to you. What do we do with that data now that we've got it?
Well, that's the next part of the equation, isn't it? Once you're actually collecting accurate data, then you've got to do something with that data. You've got to understand it to begin with. So I say the next step in, once you've acquired that data, and I don't think cherry picking data for 1 week or 1 month is great. I think you need to look at data over the course of 3 and 6 months to actually see legitimate trends and rises and ebbs and flows in your membership numbers and your information. But once you've got a reasonable data set that you can work with, you need to really drill down into that data and understand what that's actually telling you. So the example you've said, if you've got a 2,000 member gym, if the goal or the gold standard is, as we would suggest, is 2 member visits per week, you would ideally like to be seeing 4,000 visitations to your club for that week, right?
Yep.
If you're not seeing that, once you've analysed that data, and you're seeing maybe 2,500, 3,000 members, you can then say, okay, we've got a situation where members are attending, but they're not attending as frequently as perhaps we'd like them to. So what's the next step? We've got an average member attendance per week to the club of, say, 1.5 visits. Where do we want to go from here? So once you understand the data, then you can start to set realistic goals. I mean, obviously you want that big, hairy, audacious goal. You want your members coming 3 times a week, and that's a great goal to have, for 12, 18 months time potentially, but set realistic bite-sized goals. There's a really good saying, a former employer of mine used to say that, how do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time, right? You're not going to chew the whole elephant in one big sitting. You've got to start to break down your objectives into smaller, attainable goals over a period of time.
This is the GROUPEX Podcast. So what sort of goals should we be setting? I mean, okay, let's say that for the last 3 months, because we've never recorded our data or anything like that before, we've gotten our data from the CRM system. We've told instructors to write stuff down, and they've written it all down. We've got it. What do we do now? How do we set goals? What sort of goals should we be looking to set? Sam?
Well, I think the thing with goal setting is, if you decide, let's use some numbers that we've been using so far. So we said 2,000 members. Let's say you've got 3,000 visiting 3,000 visits per week, which equates to 1.6 or 7. So what you would want to do then is work out where you want to take it next. So let's say we want to go from, and let's say our group fitness is 17%, and we want to go to 20%. That 3% jump can be quite big if you look at it from an overall perspective. So what you would do then is actually take that bigger goal of a 3% uplift and cut that up, because what actually happened, I've had this conversation with a number of GFMs. You look at that 3 or 4%, it looks like a really big number. It can be between sort of 20 and 70 people most of the time. But if you've got a timetable that has, and let's use the number 70, so let's say we want a 70 increase. You got 70 classes. That's 1 extra person per week.
1 person per class.
That is a really achievable thing. If you went to every instructor on the timetable and just said, all I want you to do this month is just grow your class by 1, that's a lot easier to if you think, if we use the elephant analogy, we've gone from this big African elephant to this little teeny tiny elephant. We're not condoning eating elephants here, by the way.
No,
not at all. But it's an analogy that's been around for a long time. It's about breaking those goals down. So starting with the big picture, and then it's almost, you think of a funnel, right? You start with the big wide top of the funnel, and as you bring it down and narrow it down, it just makes it a lot easier to attain.
So for any GROUPEX managers that are engaged with us and listening at the moment, is that a target they'd be setting with the club manager or the owner of the gym to sort of go, okay, you know what, we're as we've said, 2,000 visits or 1,500 visits, whatever it is, over the next 3 months, we want to see that grow from 1,500 to 2,000. Is that a conversation that's going to be had with centre manager or club manager and GFM, or is that just something that's going to be happening at that senior management level? Dan?
Look, well, it's something that the GFM absolutely should be aware of, because realistically they're going to be in a very strong position, again, if they've got the correct number of hours or a reasonable number of hours in a week to look at this stuff and actually affect some of these changes. They're going to be best positioned to support the club with these goals, right? So it's absolutely critical that if the GFM's not actually setting these goals, that they're very much involved in the conversation around how they're being set and what that looks like moving forward. Because we know, the average club has 30, 35, 40% of their members using group fitness. Now, that's an enormous number of people that the GFM has the ability to affect or alter, which will lead to ultimately the goals of the club being met with regards to attendance as well.
And everyone has to be
cool. So I'm getting
them too, right? So, from everyone from the club manager or senior leadership team all the way down to, your group fitness instructors, receptionists, the cleaner, like everyone should be involved in the goal setting piece, because everyone has the ability to influence that, whether it's a receptionist having a conversation with a member who comes in and says, look, I'm really struggling to get results. What do I do? That's someone they can influence into a group fitness class. So it's got to be everyone, right?
Yep. Okay. So we should be setting short-term and long-term goals, right? So we're saying that we want to increase it over this year. We want to double our group fitness attendance from what we're currently seeing to what we want to see this time next year, and then break those things down individually, where it's monthly, quarterly, whatever it may be, so that then we can then pass that detail on to our GROUPEX instructors so that they know what part they're playing in the big picture. Is that right?
Exactly right.
Cool. Righto.
Absolutely.
Yep. Oh, Sammy, you put your thumb up. If I do that, you know what's going to happen over here.
I did a thumb up.
Goodness,
I did a thumb up just for Tony.
Yeah. So let's be realistic then. What would be some of the things that would stop clubs from achieving these goals? Yeah, and I'll throw that one to you.
Look, there's lots of things that can stop a club from achieving the goals. I mean, Sam touched on one right there. If your whole team isn't behind the goal, you might as well not have the goal set, right? Because if you need that support from everyone, from, as Sam said, from the cleaners, from the front of house staff, PTs, senior management, everyone needs to be involved in those goals and be on board with, yes, this is the goal we've set, and this is why we've set it, and this is how we're going to go about achieving it. So, there's lots of factors that can influence it. A big factor, and I know we touched on it in the last episode, a big factor is a GFM not having enough hours in their roster to actually sink their teeth into some of these longer term goals and how they could affect some of these changes. There's obviously there's budgetary constraints that can affect these goals, but again, you would hope that if you've set a goal, you understand there is obviously a budgetary component that you need to factor in, because ultimately to grow, you're never going to grow a business by cutting things, right? So, and that applies even more so in the group fitness space. You're never going to be able to grow your group fitness department, or you're never going to be able to grow your club attendance by reducing services in the club. So that immediately means that there's a budgetary impact. By setting bigger goals, there's potentially some impact that you're going to have to put your hand in your pocket and spend a little bit more money to achieve those goals, to provide a service or to provide a value to the customer to get them coming more frequently. So there's lots of reasons that you can be the goals can be challenging or thrown in the too hard basket. But I think the importance of setting those goals and realizing why they're being set, and then setting a framework around how you're going to achieve those goals is, if you do that in a methodical way, as a team, where you set the goal and then the what underpins that goal, how do you achieve that lift in membership or lift in revenue or lift in group fitness attendance, whatever the goal might be. What's the framework we're putting underneath it that achieves that?
Okay, cool. Let me ask this question then, and I'm probably jumping ahead because I'm sure we're going to be talking about it in future chats we do as well. How do we set those targets for classes? Like if I'm a brand new gym that's opened up and we've said there's 2,000 people, 1,500 or whatever it is coming through. How do I give my instructor a target of what I want them to achieve? What's the best way, I suppose? What are the things we need to look at when doing that? Sam, can I throw that one to you?
Well, if your class is getting 2, it certainly wouldn't be to jump from 2 to 50. So it really needs to be, they need to be SMART goals.
It's only week 1, Sam. I've just opened the gym, mate.
It's week 1. Come on, give me a gym. And now, and now, Dan, your RPM class needs to get 50.
50.
No problem.
Honestly,
With 30
sometimes
bikes.
Yeah.
it can't be a pie in the sky number, right? It has to be something that's, we use the acronym SMART. So specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Is that am I right? I'm pretty sure I'm right. Close to anyway.
I like it. Sounds
We'll
good.
roll
It sounds like I know what I'm talking about when I say that. So maybe edit it out if you need to, if I'm incorrect. But it has to be realistic.
We'll roll with it, Sammy. We'll roll with it.
The most important thing is to be realistic, right? You don't want to be setting targets that are demotivating. Goal setting, if done right, is should be a really motivating thing. It should be something you're really striving to achieve. And actually, I would hope that I remembered the SMART thing, because that's what we were just talking about in my meeting with my boss today. So, so there's obviously that factor that, making it a SMART goal, but also a lot of clubs utilize a system, and we talk to it as well, of the time of day. So different clubs will have different peaks and troughs to suit the demographic. So, for example, you might have a club in the CBD, and Tony, I know you used to work in the Sydney CBD, so you'd attest to this. Lunchtime would be your biggest time of the day. So your targets for lunchtime will be very different to your targets at 7 o'clock at night. And on the flip side, if it's a suburban club and most of your members train morning and night, you're not going to give your lunchtime classes the same targets. So we utilize generally three. So your peak time slot. So again, if it's a CBD club, your peak would be your middle of the day. It's the time that the most members are in the club. You've got your shoulder, so they kind of sit around those peak classes. And then the last one is called a service class. So we know when we're trying to attract members, sometimes we need services that maybe don't perform exactly the same as a peak class. However, that's the kind of class that a member would sign up for. So, let's use lunchtime in a suburban club. You might only get between 5 and 15 people. However, if you've got those same amount of people turning up week after week, and that class is really important to have on to obviously keep those 5 to 10 members engaged, but also to attract someone who might want to do lunchtime classes in the future. Those classes are always also as important. So when you utilize those three things, so peak, shoulder, and service, you would just set targets to suit that. So again, you wouldn't make a service class a 50, for example, with your 30 bikes.
Cool. So now we laugh at that, and I know that it's probably, most people get it, but that's, I suppose, is another thing we need to take into consideration when setting targets, right? If you only have 30 bikes, you can't set a target for 50. You can only set it on what equipment you actually have. And I can see both of you smiling there, thinking, yep, Tone, we get it. But I'm going to throw it out there to some people that if they're brand new to this, they may not completely understand that, which is why I wanted to throw it in there. Not only that, but I think it also comes down to the size of your space. Yeah. So let's say we're talking about a class like body attack as an example. How many people can you fit into a body attack class? Well, it all depends on the size of your room. Can your room only fit 15 people, or can your room fit 30 people? But I think the other thing I'm trying to get at here is your target doesn't need to be the capacity of your room. Yeah. The capacity of your room is the capacity of your room, which doesn't need to be that, if I've got 30 bikes in my cycle studio, not every single class has to achieve 30. As Sam, you touched on then, you've got peak, off-peak or peak, shoulder, and your service classes that need to be taken into consideration. If I go back to the attack class for a second, what would we, my room could probably, let's say my room can hold 50 people doing pump. What should I set my target for a class in that space that doesn't have equipment? Dan, can I throw that at you?
Yeah, look, that's a tough one to answer, and purely because it depends a little bit on the demographic coming to those classes, right? So obviously pre 2020, I won't even say the C word, but pre 2020, that there was certainly a theory with most clubs was really to shoehorn as many people that you turned up, you got a spot, right, within reason. If you could cram them in there like sardines and get 60 people into a room that realistically could only fit 55, you did it. I think that mentality has changed a little bit, and I think people and I speak about, members particularly like a little bit more space now. They like the ability to go in and have their own little area and be able to perform attack or combat or whatever it might be with some room where they're not worried about running into someone or bumping into the person next to them or in front of them. So it's really important to, again, understand your members, right?
Yep.
Some members will have no concern. Just I want to start. Get me in there. Jam me in. Don't care how busy it is. And other members again will have that. Oh, I like a little bit more space. I'm not still not completely comfortable with being right on top of the next person next to me. So difficult to give you an actual number figure, but I think again it's really important to understand your members, understand what makes them tick, and what their sort of preferences are before you set those numbers as well.
This is the GROUPEX Podcast. So as a guide, could we say that it's one person per square meter? What? Can't speak that out. One person per square meter would be a figure just to sort of give them a bit of an understanding on how many people could fit in that room. Obviously, taking into consideration, we've got pump racks, you've got your stage and all that kind of stuff. Was that sort of a figure that we could work on? One, to say maybe 1.2 square meters per person?
It's a good question. I have a feeling, I vaguely remember, and you might need to edit this out. I think it's around one person per 4 square meters is roughly the number. But Sam's been it's been more recently in the club side of things, so he probably has a better idea on what sort of group fitness class allowances for space there is.
Yeah, I think it's really dependent too on the OHS requirements for the site as well. I definitely 4x4 does definitely ring a bell for me, but it's really difficult for us to kind of give you an exact figure just based on a few factors. Tony, probably one is OHS. Number two is just the way that the club is set out in terms of what equipment is required and things like that. But I think the other factor too is the C factor. Different states have obviously adopted different ways of measuring out their room based on the last few years. So apologies, it's a sort of a roundabout politician answer. It's conversation
to get people thinking about it and get people to look into their own stuff as well. So what I would say to any clubs that are out there listening, whether it's managers or owners, suss it out, have a look at your room and see what's going on in that space, and bring the attention back into the studio to look and go, okay, cool, if we're getting 40 people, should we really have 40 in there? Can we get 50 in there? Have a look at it and see what's going on. I don't think there's no cookie cutter approach on attendance. As we've said, it's about size of the space, your equipment, all of that kind of stuff that you need to look at to make sure that you set those, set those targets correctly, but make sure that you realize that your target is not what your capacity is in the space. Yeah. Cool. Now, boys, is there anything else on that topic do you think we need to delve into, or can we just say to people, hey, you want to find out more, get on and do the OGFM?
Yeah, look, I think we've touched on, I think, as I said at the start, if you can take away those 3 key numbers and actually drill down into those 3 numbers, you're in a really strong position to make some realistic, smart goals setting, moving forward with your team. So, take your club membership, your club attendance, and your GX attendance. Take those 3 numbers, really drill down into that, and then obviously reach out to us, because we can sit down and really drill quite deeply. And Sam alluded to it before. We both love a spreadsheet. I really love the numbers side of things. Like, I really think you can learn a lot about business generally when you drill down into those numbers to understand where things are at with the club, and then utilize the business partnership team to support you in setting some goals. If you're not sure where to go once you've got those 3 numbers, you've identified some shortfalls or some things that you're doing really, really well. That's great. How do we leverage off those things you're doing really well and turn the things that maybe aren't going as well around into a positive news story as well? So that's where the business team and the OGFM course is really, 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 really helpful to get you to take that next step.
Yep. So have you got anything you wanted to add to that?
I think exactly what Dan said regarding just knowing those 3 key metrics and just actually identifying where your club's at right now. and you know, getting some, you know, setting some stuff into place so you can keep moving your business forward. Because essentially, the more people we can get attending some sort of exercise regime, as we know, it's quite a conversation at the moment, you know, in regards to the amount of people that aren't active. A lot of adults in Australia don't get enough exercise. So, you know, I think thinking of this big picture too, I mean, attendance on a piece of paper is one thing, but just remember, the more people we can get moving, the more likely we are to see more people getting active and staying active and preventing a lot of preventable issues that they'll find in the future.
Yeah.
No, brilliant. Boys, thank you. I've appreciated that. Let's pass on the first one. Let's head on into the second key play, which is recruit winning players. Now, this one is actually a bit of I'm going to say one of my favorites, because coming from where I was in the industry before stopping teaching, my network of instructors was massive in Sydney. You know, there was probably a couple of hundred people that I knew that were instructors, and they were your mates. They were that key group of people. They were always around. But I think for clubs that are either opening up or clubs that are having a bit of a struggle with GROUPEX attendance from people, but also finding instructors, this one is one of the more interesting key plays for me anyway. Sam, I'll start with you on this one. What does recruit winning players mean? What does it entail? And give us a bit of an overview on what it's all about.
Yep. So you've got your members, you've signed them up. That's great. But what's going to keep them coming back week after week? And it's not necessarily the treadmill on the gym floor. It's not the dumbbells. It's people being accountable to people. And that's where recruiting your A team is really important. You want to make sure that the instructors that you're providing your members are going to be motivational, they're going to be educational, and they're going to inspire them to keep coming back week after week. And this is obviously once you're measuring your numbers, this is obviously why it's in that second position, because it is so critical to getting your business in a good position. I really like Philip Mills has a saying that we're in the exertainment business. You know, where exercise and entertainment comes together, and that's where it becomes this really cool experience. So yeah, you can never underestimate the power that a fantastic instructor will have on your club.
Okay, so what should we be looking for in instructors then? I mean, obviously we want someone that's going to be a draw card, that's going to be getting people in, but what do we need to look for? I mean, Dan, I'll throw this one to you then. But personality-wise or traits, what are we looking for in an instructor that we need to put on our team?
Yeah, look, I don't think personality. Obviously, you want someone who is, you know, up and about, that has, you know, that bit of a spark. I guess it's probably someone that's drawn to be a bit of a people person. But that's a bit of a generalisation, right? You know, we talk about instructors being typically very extroverted, and a lot of them are. But I'm a perfect example, and as is Sam actually, of being fairly introverted personality types, like people that probably aren't generally all, you know, up and about and the life of the party, so to speak, but can still deliver, you know, really great group fitness classes. So I don't think there's any one specific characteristic. There's probably 4 or 5 really important key things to be looking for in a group fitness instructor, someone to bring onto your team. But I think before even looking at what that instructor should look like, the question goes back to where should you be looking? And I think that's I agree with you on the key play too. It's probably one of the most rewarding things as a GFM when you get it right, but it's also one of the most daunting things, because it is, you know, you can sit there and think, geez, where is my next body pump instructor coming from? How am I getting this person or a new person I've got a hole in the timetable I need to fill it, but I don't have someone to fill it. So it can be a real stressor for group fitness managers. But when you identify a person who you feel like would be a good fit, and you send them through the training and they come back and they're all, really keen and motivated to get started, that's a really rewarding part of the job too. So that's probably a very long-winded way of saying I don't think there's one key characteristic or one key personality that you should be looking for. Yeah. I think there's a number of different characteristics in a person that would make a great group fitness instructor.
Yeah. Sammy, I'll throw this to you then. You're obviously initial module trainer as well. What are the keys that we're looking for as a GROUPEX manager when we're looking to recruit instructors? Can you give us a bit of detail on what we're looking for with that?
Yeah. So with Les Mills, we have these things called the 5 key elements, and this is where I'm going to have to define both of these things, because what I'm about to talk about is more about the things that you would look for when you're looking to recruit instructors. But choreography or workout plan is key element number 1, technique key element 2, coaching number 3, number 4 connection, and then number 5 performance. So they're 5 things that we've identified within our programs create a great group fitness experience. What I want to talk about, though, is the 5 different types of instructor or star or qualities that you might look for. So these are 5 key things that we can, when you're either teaching a class or you're interviewing someone, or you've found an instructor online that might want to teach for you. These are the sort of things you can look for. So the 5 things are, I'm going to read them off the page here. So technique, coaching, communication / connection, performance, and lastly, choreography. So let's start from the top. So from technique. So it's obviously a big part of what we do is, and particularly in the Les Mills world, some programs, like your large functional training studios and things like that are not as much a visual piece as it is in the Les Mills world. But within the Les Mills world, we're very big on leading from the front, right? So being able to lead from the front starts with a really base level of great technique. So the first thing that you want to look for is when you look at this person and you see them role model the program that you want them to teach, do they role model the program really well? So generally my experience from I guess the shoulder tap, so when you tap someone on the shoulder and say, I think you'd make a great instructor, generally those people have a really great way of moving. So for indoor cycling, they ride really silky smooth and they role model really great resistance. They look like they're super fit. And when I say fit, I'm not talking about the external. I just mean fit. Like I've seen if we just sidetrack a little bit, because I don't want anyone to be confused with looking like a air quotes athlete. There are many shapes and sizes that come with instructing, and you don't have to be one look to be an athlete, right? So I think it's a really important thing to bring across. So when you're looking from a technical perspective, do they role model really, really great technique for the program that you're looking for? The next one's coaching. So regarding coaching, this is just the ability to lead someone through the workout and help them make it, almost get a good understanding for the movements, but also take them to the next level. So there's a difference between instructing a workout and actually coaching a workout. So you want to look for, and you can look for these people within sort of dance teaching classes, coaches, school teachers are generally really fantastic instructors. My wife is a school teacher, and she's a wonderful instructor. Hopefully that gets me some brownie points for saying that. Physios, personal trainers, you sort of want to look for someone that can coach people through a great workout, because people love, one of the things that we know from research is people not only want to know what to do and when to do it, but they want to know why and the benefits. And that's where a great coach comes into play. Communication skills, obviously, that's a super important thing. So you want someone that you can hold a conversation with. They're going to be in front of your members, maybe at 5 a.m. in the morning, maybe at 6 p.m. at night. And you want to kind of give them the same experience no matter where they go. I think a great instructor can teach at any time of the day and draw in members. So being able to communicate with them in a professional way, but also make them feel like a part of a community as well. And that's why it's communication / connection, because you might be able to have a conversation with someone, but can you actually connect with them and make them feel like it's the best part of their day coming to your class? I can think of many examples of members, running in the door late by a couple of minutes because they just want to escape their world and they want to jump into your class. So you obviously want to be a little bit empathetic towards that situation as well. Performance. So you can look for people at a variety of different areas. It could be going to a theatre group, and a lot of the original Les Mills instructors came from like a performing background. Not saying you have to be a performer, but sometimes those performance skills can give you the edge. People who enjoy social interaction, you don't have to be an extrovert to enjoy a social interaction. Extroversion, introversion. Some of the best instructors I know are introverted but can pull out the extroversion when they need to. I don't like to pump my own tires, but I'm probably a good example of that. I'm naturally quite introverted, but again, like Dan said, can sort of pull it out when I need to. Also, people who are great at service as well. Performing is not necessarily performing a show. It could be, just providing a next level service. And there's a lot of people. If you think about, let's say you're looking to recruit someone for front of house or as an instructor. If you walk the city, you will see so many examples of people who are selling for charities, who are. And you think about those people, that they will absolutely make a beeline for the person with their head down on their phone. Like the amount of times, you might be just trying to get 5 minutes and you try and avoid them, and they'll make a beeline for you. And that's the type of person that actually will probably make a great instructor. So they're everywhere and anywhere.
True. I think I'd take that one on board. That's a bloody good place to try and find instructors if you're out and about, especially in the city CBD area, because there's those guys out there selling so much. That would be an amazing place to start looking. But sorry, I got you sidetracked. Then go for your next one.
And even like street performers, right? Like they're probably looking for work as well, and maybe that's something that they could get into. A lot of time and effort goes into even recruiting like your membership consultants and things like that. So that's actually a method that we use, not street performers, but those sort of people that are doing is it called, it's not called spruiking, but like working for charities and things like that. We actually used to have conversations with those type of people, because they do make, they're really great at having conversations, and that's the type of people that you want. You can teach anyone skills, but you cannot teach like that personality. That's really crucial.
Yes. So true. So true. Yep.
The last part is choreography. So, like we're talking instructors in general here, but if you're using a freestyle product or program, you want to make sure that person can put together some really great choreography, because as we know from our programs, people want to be able to feel like they're successful in any workout. So if you've got someone who puts together a program that's only accessible to a certain demographic of people, that's not going to be a great experience for your members. So, if you are going down a freestyle route, making sure that they can, create really great choreography. Side note, if you're going down sort of a pre-choreographed route, you also want to make sure that they can deliver great choreography. Because we will give you the choreography notes, the PDF, or back in the day, the booklet out of the DVD or a VHS, if you go back that sort of far.
Yes, we do.
We can give you, it's faster, harder scooter, I heard, but we can give you the choreography, but if you can't learn it, that's going to make it very difficult for you to deliver a really great group fitness experience. That's going to get in the way. So
yeah.
Matching the best gyms and studios with the best group exercise instructors. If you want to get your classes covered or want to teach more and earn more, simply let the Cover Me app do the work. No more WhatsApp groups and social media groups, no more chasing, only relevant, personalized notifications. Just check in at a club, an invoice will be automatically generated, ready for you to get paid. It takes just a couple of minutes to create a Cover Me professional profile. So, raise your profile and raise your game. Cover Me. Let's make it happen.
So where should clubs be looking for instructors? Where do you find your instructors? I mean, we've touched on a couple there with the outreach guys that are out there in the middle of the street, selling whatever it is that they're selling and trying to make you to buy whatever it is that they're flogging. Street performers, but where else should we be looking? Dan, I'll throw this one to you. Where else should clubs be looking, or where should group fitness managers be looking to find instructors?
Yeah, so Sam's touched on obviously a lot of external places that you could look: performing arts studios, sports teams, physical education, school teachers, things like that, which are awesome ideas, because obviously that helps to grow your pool of people involved in a club as well. But the most obvious place is internally. Like, that's where you've already got a captive audience of people, right? So you've got people coming, hopefully your body pump classes and your peak times are packed out. And you've got probably 40 or 50 people you're looking at to assess their technique, their connection, their ability, how you think they would go becoming instructors. So, that's the low-hanging fruit in terms of where you'd find instructors from existing members that are been coming for a while, or even if they haven't been coming for a while. Like, that shouldn't be a caveat on getting a tap on the shoulder, but obviously having those conversations with guys from your classes is a great way to recruit new instructors, and then looking further afield within the business as well. So I know I had a lot of success with learn to swim instructors. We know learn to swim instructing is a bit of a thankless job often, and it's quite a transient workforce. They're often uni students that might stick around for a couple of years or shorter. The concept of teaching a kid to swim is great, and it's a very noble thing, but the actual action of doing it day in, day out in the pool is perhaps not as appealing over a period of time. So how can you look at people that are already in your business, already understand your business and your unique selling points, and understand and follow or involved in the culture of that business already, that can branch out into other avenues of service within the business. So learn to swim instructors are a great one. Personal trainers, another place where any personal trainer that wants more clients for personal training, for one-on-one, why would you not be involved in group fitness, right? Because there you've got a massive audience that you can talk to, and typically personal trainers have already got that understanding inside the club. They've got a membership, they've got a connection with members already. So what an awesome place for for personal trainers to drive their own business, as well as being in contact with more people in the club. And then you've got, and not to discount your front of house staff, your reception staff that, maybe are working 15 hours a week, and you might be concerned, are they going to stick around for 15 hours a week in the long term? We know not just the fitness industry, lots of industries have challenges with retaining their staff, just like they have with retaining members, right? So how can we retain that staff member, that valued staff member, for a long period of time? Well, again, it comes down to getting them further engaged in the business. It's very similar when you look at it. Members are retained when they're regularly attending the club. Instructors or staff are retained by the business when they're involved in the business, potentially across multiple facets. So there's a few really, really good places to look internally as well. Rather than and then obviously you've got your old your CCADs and things like that. I think, and I talk to my club partners a lot about, we've got to stop looking at the existing pool of instructors that we've got to take on more. What we need to do is grow the pool of instructors, right? That's to me and I'm really passionate about that, growing the pool of instructors that we have, and that might be growing the existing team to take on more programs. That's sort of leveraging your existing team to do more for you. That's important. But then how are we actually growing? So instead of having 10 instructors that can teach these 70 classes a week, having 12, 14, 15, 18, whatever it might be, instructors, that then gives the club more scope to put more programming, different programming, more classes, and so on as well.
I remember the legend Emma Barry turning around to me once and saying, "Tony, you need to look for tomorrow's instructors today." And that was the one that always sat with me.
Yeah.
Was, you need to be constantly looking. And I suppose the next question I had, which I was going to throw at you guys, was how much time should a club spend on recruiting? I mean, do you just go, "Oh, look, we'll only do 2 hours a day," or what? Sam, what would you suggest to club? How often should a club be looking to for recruiting staff?
ABR, always be recruiting. It should be a constant.
Dude, I love that one. ABR.
If you think of the ABC, always be closing. Within management, it's always be recruiting, and you never know when your favorite instructor is going to unfortunately have to leave for could be a variety of reasons. Could be moving houses, could be moving areas. You just never know, right? Yep. So it's so important to always be looking for that next person, and making it I think again, like you're creating a scoreboard. We talked about goal setting. Having a goal every month to do a few key tasks. So generally with club partners, we've got a list of, I guess, best practice that we know that works really well. So we recommend every month having a couple of those things in play. What I would certainly suggest to clubs is utilizing things like recruitment events. So you might have 2,000 members, and those 2,000 members will know at least one other person in their life that is external to the club. So, what we know from group fitness members is they'll refer generally 3 people to the club. But imagine if you get them to refer just one person who might be a great instructor to the club. That'd be pretty cool as well. Okay. So you want to utilize your network. The fitness industry is a real network-led industry. So, having those recruitment events run at least sort of once a quarter or even twice a year would be something that I would highly recommend. But certainly always be on the lookout. When you're doing your groceries, who's at if you're at the self-serve checkout, there's always one person at least walking around. When you're walking down the street, you might see that person doing like I said before, doing the charity work or selling energy or something. Maybe they're looking to get into something. When you're in the club teaching a class, is there someone? When you're having a conversation with a member or a staff member? So there are so many easy things that you can constantly be doing. It's just realistically making sure that you are proactively always recruiting, because a CCAD, when you lose your favorite instructor, is realistically not going to find you someone that's going to be ready next week.
Yeah.
And sometimes too, just from a starting from scratch position, like let's say you do have someone that wants to get started on training, there is that sort of run-in period where you want to be setting them up for success and not just throwing them in on the peak time slot. You want to have that time to be able to mentor them, to teach them the skills they need. Because ultimately what we teach them, even for Les Mills at initial module training level, yes, we are teaching them the basics to teaching classes, but you need time in the saddle to be able to craft your skills and so that you can jump in on any time slot and make it successful.
If I can just jump in, Tony, too, just to add one more piece to that. You cannot recruit as a GFM or a club manager or whatever your role is. You cannot recruit from behind a desk. You have to be in front of people, right? You have to be having conversations with your staff. You have to be having conversations with your members. You have to be always looking and visible and really having engaging conversations with people. You can't realistically sit behind a desk and recruit. I think we've both sort of mentioned that realistically online is maybe not as great a tool as maybe it once was, to be honest with you. I think it's something that you really need to be front and center with your members, with your whoever it is that you're talking to, and really engaging in those conversations regularly and always looking, I think, as Sam pointed out, always be recruiting, always be looking for that next talent. Because, I can give plenty of examples where I've thought, I'm good to go. I've got plenty of body pump instructors or plenty of body balance instructors. No worries. I'm not looking for a new pump instructor for a while. And have one person fall pregnant, maybe one person gets injured and one person takes on a different role and they can't do those classes that they once had. They've gone to a different job, whatever it might be. Then all of a sudden, you've gone from having this glut of instructors where you nearly can't provide them enough classes to keep them on the books, to having not enough instructors to service the existing classes you've got on the timetable. So I think you need to always be looking and imagine. I sort of changed my mindset to be, we're always short instructors. Even when we weren't, always think I need another instructor for that, for that class, because you just don't know, as Sam said, when that circumstance is going to change. And then the last thing you want to be having to do is cancelling classes on members, or cancelling programs that are popular because you don't have instructors. I mean, that, to be totally honest, and not to be too negative about it, but if you're cancelling programs or if you're cancelling classes because you don't have enough instructors, that's a big fail from the people that should be recruiting, right? It really is. You should always have sufficient instructors ready to go. There's obviously always anomalies, one-off situations, which is just super last minute, you can't do anything about it or whatever. But if you in a consistent problem with a program or consistent problem with a time slot, you really need to be front and center looking at where is my next group of instructors coming from.
Matching the best gyms and studios with the best group exercise instructors. If you want to get your classes covered or want to teach more and earn more, simply let the Cover Me app do the work. No more WhatsApp groups and social media groups, no more chasing, only relevant, personalized notifications. Just check in at a club, an invoice will be automatically generated, ready for you to get paid. It takes just a couple of minutes to create a Cover Me professional profile. So, raise your profile and raise your game. Cover Me. Let's make it happen.
Yep. So whose responsibility is it to recruit?
Everyone's.
Well, it's a good question. That's. I mean, I would suggest it's the GFM's role to recruit. It's their team, right? Like the GFM, the group fitness manager is the person who oversees the group fitness department, and again, with the appropriate number of hours, should be managing all elements of that department. So really, the recruitment should sit with those guys. Now, I can already hear GFM screaming at me, well, I don't have enough hours in the day to do that. I don't have enough hours in the week to focus, attention on recruiting as well. That's a conversation you really do need to have with people that are giving you the hours you've got, to be honest, because the reality is, if you don't have enough hours to do that recruitment, you need more hours. It really is that simple. You can't rely on a club manager, or you can't rely on a HR department to necessarily recruit for you. They can support the recruitment, of course, but as a GFM what you're looking for in an instructor, as we've talked about. So it really does have to come down to the group fitness manager managing that team, and part of that is managing the recruitment of that team.
Yep. I'd also throw out there too that everybody is responsible for recruiting. Yep. Now it forms, as you said, it falls directly and wholly solely to that person managing that department. Yep, the GROUPEX manager, you're in charge of that department. But I'm going to say everybody that's involved in that gym, whether it's an instructor, whether it's a janitor, whether it's a receptionist, whether it's a club manager or club owner, everyone should always have their eyes open to the fact that anybody in front of them could be a GROUPEX instructor. Yeah, they could be that one person that walks through the door every day that's a bit flamboyant at the front of reception as they're walking in, that's over the top, that could be your next jam or your next dance instructor. There could be some bloke that's upstairs every day that's doing bench press and punching it out, that is so meticulous in what they're doing, could be your next body pump instructor. I think we've got to get out of that mindset of oh, no, as an instructor, it's not my responsibility. You know what? Yeah, it is. It is your responsibility for sure. You've got to find it. Everyone's got to find it. Everyone's got to find that next instructor that's coming through. On that, we touched on it very, very briefly there for a second. Is social media a good place to recruit? Sam, I'll ask you that one.
Yes and no. I think when I say yes and no, there are a numerous amount of Facebook. Let's use Facebook as an example. There's a numerous amount of Facebook groups that exist that maybe aren't moderated, that could potentially mean that you're constantly posting for an instructor to a group that potentially might not be teaching, might not be in the area, things like that. As I said before, the fitness industry is really network driven in terms of, your recruitment and all that sort of stuff. So I think social media has a great power to be able to reach a large amount of people at once. And as I said before, every member knows someone, or could potentially know someone that could be a great instructor, and the same with every staff member. So utilizing things like social media, for example, to create a post about what's so great about your club and share this with a friend if you think that'd be a good fit for your team, that's a really powerful thing that you could use it for. So yes and no, used in the right, like anything, right? You got to use it in the right way to get the best result from it.
Yeah.
Yep. And I, going back to your point of everyone's responsibility is recruiting. Absolutely. The most important thing though, as a group fitness leader, or a group fitness, let's call it a group fitness leader or group exercise leader, is to ensure that your team knows, number one, that you're always recruiting, but also number two, what sort of things to look for. Because not every, you as Dan alluded to, every group fitness leader knows exactly what they're looking for in terms of the timetable. But if no one else knows what they're looking for, it's going to make it really hard. I mean, if you're in the club, between 10 and 20 hours a week, there is a huge gap in the week that you're missing out on. We're only talking two to three business days realistically, if you put it into 8-hour blocks, that you're in the club, and the club's open 7 days a week. You've probably got staff there a lot of the time. So it's really important to be clear with, what sort of things you're looking for. If there's a particular instructor you're looking for, say, for example, you're looking for a body pump instructor, you're looking for a Zumba instructor, it's really important that your team know who you're looking for, what you're looking for, so they can then report back to you. And actually, I'll give you an example of where I saw this done really well. And it's not specifically fitness related, but I went into a retail store, and a girl walked up to the counter with a resume to hand in a resume. It happens quite a bit with students, right? So hands it into the person behind the counter. And it wasn't just, okay, thanks for your resume, I'll pass it on to my manager. The person behind the counter actually asked a series of questions. So it was, what's your availability like? It was just a series of questions that were pertinent to the position. So what that meant was, when that person took the resume to their manager, they could actually give them a little bit of info about them to make it a bit easier, right? So if you're looking for someone to teach 6 a.m. pump, for example, and this person's only available at 7 p.m., you might bring them on, but if they're only available when you don't need them, that's probably an easy sort of person to say, hey, thanks for your interest, we'll keep you on for later.
Yep. Pre-qualifying, I think, as you're getting to there, is key to make sure that you're not wasting their time, they're not wasting yours. But if you're out there, if you've got your team out there always looking, make sure they're asking those questions and finding out as much as they possibly can. Yeah, cool. The next question I had is how many instructors do we need to have per program? What should we be looking at? I mean, is obviously 2 people enough? One to do it and one to cover it. Dan?
Cool. You're asking all the tough questions today, Tony. Again, and I don't want it to sound like a politician, but it is dependent on the size of your timetable, the number of classes of each program you've got on. What a really good process I go through with club partners is to sit down, look at the timetable top to bottom, and look at each class and basically flag them, not on attendance, but flag them red, yellow or green, depending on the number of instructors they have available that can teach that class. So obviously, if you've got only one person that can teach that class, that's a major red flag for that class, right? Because as soon as that person is not available, you're scrambling to find someone that can teach it, or you're having to cancel it, or you're having to change the program because you don't have someone to teach. So going through each program, each class on the timetable, day by day, and working out, do I have 1, 2, 3, 10 instructors that would be available to teach that class? And then from that little process, you can identify shortcomings, if there are any, in your timetable where, okay, I've got an issue with my body balance class at 10:30 on a Tuesday because it's a really popular class, but no one can teach it if that instructor that's scheduled can't teach it. So, okay, now I need to be looking at people that can teach through that middle of the day. And again, on a reasonable size timetable, you're probably going to have a few people that can do it. Let's look at those instructors. They obviously don't teach balance because they currently are not available to teach that particular program.
Yep.
Is one of those guys available to go and do their training? Would they be interested in going and doing their training for that program? So I've got some cover. So I would say a couple of things. One, in terms of program, you need at least three of that program on the timetable to be successful. Clubs running one or two of a certain program throughout the week is just not enough to get enough traction in that program to keep it going and get the momentum it deserves. And two, I would never, speaking from experience in a previous role, would never have added a class onto a timetable unless I knew I had at the very least, one extra person that could teach it. So I had my dedicated instructor to teaching that, but there was at least always one person that was available to teach should that instructor not be able to do so. So a little building some redundancy into your timetable to make sure that you've got, you can always run the class. There's really no excuse. So the example I'll give in the club that I managed and was involved in for a number of years in Bathurst, that club had been running for about 25 or 30 years, and this is not an embellishment. They never ever cancelled a class. Yep. Never. Not in 30 years with a timetable of 60 or 70 classes a week. They never cancelled a class, and that was because that we had this built-in redundancy to every program. That okay, Sam can't teach today, but Daniel can do it, or Tony can do it. So that's again a bit of a long-winded way of saying if you've got a program that doesn't have a backup, at least one viable backup for that class, then that's a major red flag for that class time slot.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that the only exception to that rule that I would suggest is if it's, as Sam was talking about earlier on, a service class. You know, you may not have 3 of those on a week. You may only have 1 or 2. You know, if it's a specialized jiu-jitsu class or a specialized Zumba class or a specialized something, you know, Tai Chi or something that's out of the ordinary that you're putting on for service members, still make sure you've got it on the timetable to make sure you're servicing those members and make sure you've got at least 1 or 2 instructors. But that would be the only exception I would throw into that mix. The last question, which I'm going to throw on this before we end this topic, is how much should an instructor be paid? Now, I think that's the $1 million question, isn't it, boys? It's the topic in our industry that I think has been the bone of contention for quite some time. And depending on how many Facebook groups you're involved with or how many groups you're out there with, there is so much topic, so much talk about it. Is there a guide? Would you guys recommend clubs pay something? Dan, I'll throw it to you first of all. What would you recommend an instructor gets paid or a club pays an instructor, and how would we work that out?
So an instructor should be paid what they're worth. And what I mean by that sounds very simplistic, but what I mean by that is an instructor should be paid based on what they're bringing to the business, what they're bringing in terms of foot traffic through the door, and obviously take into account time adjustment factors that we talked about with different time factors of classes and having realistic goals set around that. I really object to this idea, and this is going to be potentially controversial. I really object to the idea that people get paid more based on tenure, based on the length of time they've been teaching at a club or at a facility. I think that's the poorest metric by which to reward your instructors or remunerate your instructors. It's not about how long you've been teaching. It's about how many people, and it's just a crude, how many people are you getting into your classes? So that's sort of the answer to the question is pay your instructors based on their performance. It has to be based on performance. Like there's really very few industries that I can think of that don't pay on a performance basis. So, you know, you might have an instructor that's been around for 15 years. They might be a great instructor, but for whatever reason, they're only getting half a dozen people to their class, right? Does that instructor, because they've been been with the club for 15 years deserve to be paid more than the person who's been with you 9 months or 12 months that's just full of energy and packing out their classes? I would argue no. In terms of a dollar figure, that's super hard to put down. That we've got, clubs that are paying anywhere from $35 and $40 a class right up to $80 or $90 a class. Again, it's a tough one because it depends on, there's so many variables to that. But I think again, pre-2020, people were teaching group fitness primarily because they love to teach group fitness, and the money was really very secondary. We're in a position now where we do have shortages in instructors. We have a shortage in personal trainers, whatever it might be. It's not just fitness industry. It's Australia wide, it's worldwide. Actually, the shortages in different industries. We have to start to look at remuneration and how we keep those good instructors. And if you're losing instructors and they're telling you it's because I can go down the road and earn $10 a class or $15 a class more, that's kind of your answer. Be dictated to a certain extent by the market forces around you, and make sure you're rewarding your instructors for a good job.
Yeah. Sam, what are your thoughts on that? How much should an instructor be paid, or how should clubs look to work that figure out that they're paying their instructors?
What a very interesting question, Tony. Look,
that sounds like a political answer's coming our way.
Okay, I'm gonna answer this as politically as possible, because I know that there are so many different pay scales, awards, etc., that are out there, and so it's really hard to go, this is without having sort of a governing body. It's really hard just to go, this is the wage. I think there's a number of factors to consider, and I think Dan's point on how many people you can draw in is very important. Should there be a minimum? Yes. What is the minimum? Probably not for me to answer. But certainly I do know there's a number of clubs that maybe aren't paying quite what they could, but that's it for and again, it's a number of factors, and it's a really interesting market at the moment, just given the challenges with so many things financially. On one side, you obviously want to pay an instructor what they're worth, but on the other side, there's so many different stresses, etc. But that's where, if we come back to that first key of creating a scoreboard, if you sort of don't know your numbers really well, it's going to be hard to be a strong business, to be in a position to be able to really reward your team for the hard work that they do. Because I know so many people instructors are generally really hardworking people, right? So you obviously want to make sure that you're rewarding that hard work, whether that's a once-off little bonus for for hitting your quarterly goal for your class, or whether every now and then you reward hitting your monthly target, things like that. So, all these things kind of play into each other. But I think, in short, there probably should be a minimum. Again, what does it look like? There's probably a bigger conversation that sort of happens around that. But certainly it's an important one, I think.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the response from both of you. I threw you under the bus there when I knew I was going to ask the question to you. There is no right or wrong answer. Yeah, I think there is, as you've both said, each club has to look at it case by case. There are regional clubs that can only afford to pay $35. There are CBD clubs that can afford to pay $95 per class. It all depends on where that club is at. Now, until we get a proper governing body to govern everything that's going on within the fitness industry, then I think we can probably look at something. There probably are award wages out there that clubs need to have a look at. So if you're not sure, my answer there is to go and do some research, go and have a look. Don't so much compare yourself on what the club down the road's doing, because a boutique down the road may be able to afford to pay their instructors $80 a class, depending on what their membership model actually is and how much their members are paying. So look at everything, look at all of it. Take into consideration everything you find online. There's a lot of conversation about it. A lot of councils I know pay a bit more than independents, and then you've got chains that are paying somewhere in between. So on that, go and have a look, go and suss it out. We're not the space to actually dictate to people right here what people should be should be being paid. We're not governing body. We're here to talk about it, to bring the attention to people to say, hey, go search it out. For those instructors that are listening, that are sitting there having a whinge and a bitch about it, I totally understand where you're coming from. I totally get it. Being an instructor for so many years, we weren't paid what we should be. And I know that there's so many out there at the moment that aren't getting paid what you should. But my point with that is, don't sit there and bitch and whinge about it. Don't get on social media and cause a stir. That's not going to help us in any way, shape, or form. It's not going to help what the cause is. My suggestion to you is go and have a chat to your GROUPEX manager. Have a chat to your GROUPEX manager. Have a chat to your club manager. Take your data from your attendance, as we've just spoken about, with them and go, hey, this is what I'm doing. Yep. Can we look at increasing it? Don't demand stuff from your club, because I'll tell you what, if I was a GX manager and someone come up and demanded stuff from me, you wouldn't be teaching for me for long. I'd be looking at somebody else. But come up and have that conversation. Have the conversation with me. Ask to have the conversation with me and the club manager. Sit down and show some stuff. You know, I'm going to say to you as an instructor, cool. I appreciate the fact that that's what your attendance is. Let's work on something together. Let's work on what else we can do. If you want more money, what else can we do in order to get you more money? Yeah, I think that just comes down to the big thing I say at the moment is have a conversation. Don't assume. Don't try and dictate, but have a conversation with someone and work it out. Everything can be worked out in a conversation. So GROUPEX instructors, I hope that this doesn't flood GROUPEX managers at the moment or this next week. I expect you guys to go and have a chat to your GROUPEX manager about what you're actually earning, and GROUPEX managers, take that person to have a chat with your club manager or your club owner as well and see what you can work out in that space. Boys, let's wrap it up there for key play number 2 for this week. Thank you so much for coming in and having a chat with me. We will reconvene again next week to run through the next keys. But again, if there's anyone that's listening that needs some support, wants some support, reach out to Sammy and Daniel here, or reach out if they are your whoever your business partnership manager is, I should say, in your state. And also, if you're not a Les Mills instructor, Les Mills club, reach out to Les Mills. These guys will be able to help you in more ways than you can possibly imagine. But yeah, next week we'll jump into the other 2. But boys, thanks so much.
No worries at all. Thanks for having us, Tony.